Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's Tuesday, the 3rd of February 2026, and the time is... had lipstick on my teeth. Of course. What is the time? I've forgotten. The time is 3:49 p.m. Brisbane, Queensland, Australia time. So as you can see, I've had my hair done. I look glamorous for another 8 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks. I get it done usually every 8 weeks. So scrubbing up okay with a bit of help from Foyles and my wonderful talented hairdresser Kylie. Thank you, Kylie, to you. She does a wonderful job. It's just a pity I can't keep my hair looking so wonderful all the time, but you know, it is what it is. It's a bit like that at Titania's Realm. Bit hit and miss. As long as there's no hitting involved, I'm okay with that. Don't really miss that much, to be honest, so it's all good, isn't it? What am I raving on about now? I've been down on my way home. I had Red Rooster, which is very naughty and fattening, and then I decided to pour the drink of lemonade 7-Up into my glass and drink from my psychedelic metal steel straw, because I'm a psychedelic dreamer, and psychedelic dreamers have to be psychedelic. Without the drugs, people are there. No psychedelics were involved in the process of drinking this lemonade. Just need to clarify that point. Psychedelics might have cured some of my mental health issues, or they might have made me worse and potentially killed me, so I wasn't going to play fast and loose with that gamble and how my brain wiring might react to certain things. Occasionally, on rare occasions, I did used to smoke a bit of cannabis, and that also could be, you know, random, whether I had a positive experience and mellowed the fuck out, or whether I went completely OTT with anxiety and some kind of weird, almost psychosis. So I gave up that for a bad idea too. It did calm me down most of the time though, so it was good for that, but I can neither afford it nor access it. So Mama T's doing this life completely, you know, medication free and recreation drug free. And not that I was ever addicted to it, thank the gods. I'm fortunate because I do have an addictive personality. I'm addicted to chocolate, I'm addicted to fried foods, I'm addicted to life, l'chaim. But I'm fortunate that I haven't become an alcoholic or, you know, a recreational drug user and an addict in any way, form or manner. In that regard, because that would have been the living end of me, people of Earth. I've seen what I get like when I have a chocolate craving and I can't get my chocolate. It's not pretty. I always make sure I've got some chocolate in the house for times like that, when I'm on a berserker rampage and need chocolate. It can be very distressing if there isn't any around. Chocolate, even Cadbury's normal, ordinary, boring garden variety chocolate, is getting very expensive at the supermarket now. I've had to curtail on it actually, which might be good for my figure, but I had to cut back quite a bit because can't afford it. So it's all been very terrifying actually. I'm not sure how long I can continue to exist on this planet and this level of dimensionality where all my closest friends are gone and I can't afford ordinary life anymore. But I got my hair done because I want to look pretty before I die, you know. Not necessarily directly before I die, but I just want to maintain some sense of attractiveness and decorum and still feel a bit pretty. Entitled to that, aren't I? To feel a bit attractive, even though I'm an older woman now. Just because I'm alone and nobody frickin' loves me doesn't mean I have to let everything slide, does it? Does it? Don't know. Anyway, I'm happy I got my hair done and I feel got my eyebrows and my eyelashes done, so I feel better. I feel a bit uplifted. It's good for me. So, excuse me. Let us continue with reading part 3. As long liveth the merry man, they say, as doth the sorry man, and longer by a day. Udall, Ralph Royster Doyster. In other words, choose to be happy, because if you're sad, life drags on longer by a day, but it's easier and more congenial to choose to be happy. But I don't believe in the 90s principle of faking it till you make it anymore, because it's created of a society of zombied, soulless people who are superficial, selfish and corrupt, putting on a, happy, fake, superficial grin on everything, and yes, seems to work for them as opposed to not working for me, but it's so fake. I mean, yes, I've faked myself up with my eyebrows and my eyelashes, but just this Botox, plastic, fantastic, superficial, even relationships are one-dimensional and superficial now. It's all about using and abusing and no real connectivity, no real heart and soul in anything. It's fucking distressing is what it is. But I'm choosing to be happy in spite of all the weird things that have happened to our planet. And I've had my hair done and I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to express that happiness by reading you a story, people of Earth. I mean, I could be wallowing in bed and mired in some deep depression and just wallow and lie fallow for the rest of my life, but I did that for 20 years and I don't want to lose another 20 years. However much time is allotted to me by the gods, I actually do want to be, enjoying life and enjoying my creativity, and when I can afford it, making jewellery and reading stories here on YouTube and contributing via my darts when I find a congenial, safe dart space. Well, I might have to give up on that idea, just darts at home. It's safer that way. Not any opportunities to interface one-on-one with other humans, but safer, infinitely safer. It's a shame that it's come to this with our world, it really is. And I know it's not an attitude problem on my part, because I hear other people saying how difficult it is to connect now. So it's not just me. Thank the goddess. For a while there, a few weeks back, I thought maybe I really have, lost it, gone nuts. But no. Yeah, but no, but yeah, but no. So, it's a beautiful day. It's a bit cooler today. The birdies didn't get to go outside because I was out getting my hair done, and I think it's too late to whip them out now and then whip them back in. We'll go out tomorrow, my boys, if it's a nice day. What do you say, Kemi? You says, "Oh, dear Mama, always a bit bored in here. It's boring in here, but we're happy you're home. We can listen to your voice reading to the people of Earth, and we feel like we're part of the party of consciousness, so it's not so bad." Yeah, she did an excellent job with my hair today. Even the cuts, how I like it. Cut it beautifully today. Well done, well done. If I blow wave it every day like she did, I could have it looking like that. I could do that, you know. I have got the brush. I'm not very good at the blowing of the waving. But I could start making a proper commitment, put on makeup every day and blow wave my hair before I get on YouTube and present myself to you with my stories. But I like to be authentic and real, and so some days you get me with all my beads on my hair doing the full shamanic exotic presentation. Haven't done that for a long time, put beads on my hair. And other days you get me, I look a bit scruffy. I was a bit annoyed reviewing my video yesterday because I brushed my hair before I came to my channel to go online to read the story. I know for a fact I brushed my hair, but when I reviewed it, my hair was all buffy and doing weird things, flying away like a little nest on the top, and I was like, how did that happen? I definitely brushed my hair. It's a bit weird, isn't it? Anyway, it'll be a bit calmer now that it's been coloured and trained and blow waved and cut, and hopefully it'll settle down. So on the subject of settling down, people of Earth and all other interdimensional entities of love, light, truth, righteousness, holiness, kindness, sweetness, benevolence, abundance, prosperity, beneficence, healing and blessing be upon us all. We begin chapter 13 of part 3, the Snow White Villa. Right. I'm always struggling when I sit at this bench where to put my book and be comfortable. I don't know why that is. Perched on a hilltop among olive trees, the new villa, white as snow, had a broad veranda running along one side, which was hung with a thick pelmet of grapevine. In front of the house was a pocket handkerchief-sized garden, neatly walled, which was a solid tangle of wild flowers. The whole garden was overshadowed by a large magnolia tree. I love magnolia trees. The glossy dark green leaves of which cast a deep shadow. The rutted driveway wound away from the house, down the hillside, through olive groves, vineyards and orchards, before reaching the road. We had liked the villa the moment Spiro had shown it to us. It stood, decrepit but immensely elegant, among the drunken olives, and looked rather like an 18th century exquisite reclining among a congregation of char ladies. An 18th century exquisite. Interesting way of describing a house. Its charms had been greatly enhanced, from my point of view, by the discovery of a bat in one of the rooms, clinging upside down to a shutter and chittering with dark malevolence. I had hoped that he would continue to spend the day in the house, but as soon as we moved in, he decided that the place was getting overcrowded and departed to some peaceful olive trunk. I regretted his decision, but having many other things to occupy me, I soon forgot about him. It was at the White Villa that I got on really intimate terms with the Mantids. Up till then I had seen them occasionally prowling through the myrtles, but I had never taken very much notice of them. Now they forced me to take notice of them, for the hilltop on which the villa stood contained hundreds, and most of them were much larger than any I had seen before. They squatted disdainfully on the olives, among the myrtles, on the smooth green magnolia leaves, and at night they would converge on the house, whirring into the lamplight with their green wings churning like the wheels of ancient paddle steamers. I'm going to have to fix the earring later. It's driving me nuts that it keeps facing the wrong way. And sometimes it does face the right way, so like my hair, a mind of its own. Right. Churning like the wheels of ancient paddle steamers, to alight on the tables or chairs and stalk mincingly about, turning their heads from side to side in search of prey, regarding us fixedly from bulbous eyes and chinless faces. I had never realized before that mantids could grow so large, for some of the specimens that visited us were fully 4.5 inches long. These monsters feared nothing and would without hesitation attack something as big or bigger than themselves. Do you want to see what 4.5 inches long is? That long. Yeah, I've seen bigger ones here in Australia. Very big ones. They're a bit frightening because they're so big and creepy looking. 4.5 inches is not too creepy though. I guess it's like anything in the mantid world. Its size really does matter. These insects seemed to consider that the house was their property and the walls and ceilings their legitimate hunting grounds. But the geckos that lived in the cracks in the garden wall also considered the house their hunting ground. And so the mantids and the geckos waged a constant war against each other. Most of the battles were mere skirmishes between individual members of the two forms of animals, but as they were generally well matched, the fights rarely came to much. Occasionally, however, there would be a battle really worth watching, I was lucky enough to have a grandstand view of such a fight, for it took place above, on, and in my bed. Seems a bit extraordinary, doesn't it? A mantid and a gecko fighting in your bed. Don't think I'd like that. I'd find that a bit creepy. Don't like things fighting in my bed, or fighting to get into bed with me. Like when I had that incubus back, when was that? Last May or June, can't remember now. I wrote about it. It was creepy as fuck, that was. Really creepy. Anyway. I have a fairly good idea who sent that to, but anyway, fortunately, after I cast it out, it stopped. It stopped trying to pull that creepy stunt. So there is that. Right. During the day, most of the geckos lived under the loose plaster on the garden wall. As the sun sank and the cool shadow of the magnolia tree enveloped the house and garden, they would appear, thrusting their small heads out of the cracks and staring interestedly around with their golden eyes. I quite like geckos. They're kind of cute in a weird sort of way, because reptiles aren't my favourite living forms, but we've got two kinds here in Brisbane. One makes little chirping noises and is sort of speckled, and the other, or was it the other one that makes the chirping noises? And then one's sort of, beigey browny and isn't speckled so much. It's definitely two different kinds. Maybe there's more varieties, but it's the kinds I've noticed. And they crawl over my walls when I'm watching TV, and then when they see that I can see them, they hide behind my tapestries. But I don't really mind, because I figure they're eating any cockroach egg sacs that cockroaches might leave. And so, and what can you do? It's not like you can chase geckos out of the house. So I just observe them, and they try and hide from me, and then they peep out, and sometimes they run across the wall, give me a little bit of a fright, because I worry about it being cockroaches. But I'm not opposed to geckos, is what I'm saying. They're pretty harmless, and they don't try and climb on me or get weird with me. So we have a understanding. What I like to euphemistically refer to as harmonic resonance. They don't bother me, I don't bother them, and vice versa. Right. Gradually they slid out into the wall, their flat bodies and stubby, almost conical tails looking ash grey in the twilight. Guess you could call them conical. Ours have got longer tails though than that. They would move cautiously across the moss-patched wall until they reached the safety of the vine over the veranda, and there wait patiently until the sky grew dark and the lamps were lit. I have to close this, it's hurting my eyes again. My eyes are very sensitive. Oh, even hurts as it's moving down. Right, it's a bit better, isn't it? Still got a bit of a sunshine over my face though. Yes, that's better now. My eyes eyes are literally burning just from that bit of sunlight shining on my face. Then they would choose their hunting areas and make their way to them across the wall of the house. Some to the bedrooms, some to the kitchen, while others remained on the veranda among the vine leaves. There was a particular gecko that had taken over my bedroom as his hunting ground, and I grew to know him quite well and christened him Geronimo, since his assaults on the insect life seemed to me as cunning and well planned as anything that famous Red Indian had achieved. Geronimo seemed to be a cut above the other geckos. To begin with, he lived alone under a large stone on the zinnia bed beneath my window, and he would not tolerate another gecko anywhere near his home, nor for that matter would he allow any strange gecko to enter my bedroom. He rose earlier than the others of his kind, coming out from beneath his stone while the wall and house were still suffused with pale sunset light. He would scuttle up the flaky white plaster precipice until he reached my bedroom window and poke his head over the sill, peering about curiously and nodding his head rapidly 2 or 3 times, whether in greeting to me or in satisfaction at finding the room as he had left it. I could never make up my mind. You're so quiet, my beautiful boys. The sun's come out. The sun shines out, boys. Hello, Kimmy. Tempted to rush them out in the garden, even if it's only for a few hours, because it's looking pretty out there now. He would sit on the windowsill, gulping to himself until it got dark and a light was brought in. In the lamp's golden gleam, he seemed to change colour from ash grey to a pale, translucent, pinky pearl that made his neat pattern of goose pimples stand out and made his skin look so fine and thin that you felt it should be transparent so that you could see the viscera coiled neatly as a butterfly's proboscis in his fat tummy. His eyes glowing with enthusiasm, he would waddle up the wall to his favourite spot, the left-hand outside corner of the ceiling, and hang there upside down, waiting for his evening meal to appear. The food was not long in arriving. The first shoal of gnats, mosquitoes and ladybirds, which Geronimo ignored, was very soon followed by the daddy longlegs, the lacewing flies, the smaller moths, and some of the more robust beetles. Watching Geronimo's stalking tactics was quite an education. A lacewing or a moth having spun round the lamp until it was dizzy, would flutter up and settle on the ceiling in the white circle of lamplight printed there. Geronimo, hanging upside down in his corner, would stiffen. He would nod his head 2 or 3 times very rapidly, and then start to edge across the ceiling cautiously, millimetre by millimetre, his bright eyes on the insect in a fixed stare. Of course, he probably doesn't blink like I blink. I'm not a very good gecko. Who knew? Slowly, he would slide over the plaster until he was 6 inches or so away from his prey, whereupon he stopped for a second and you could see his padded toes moving as he made his grip on the plaster more secure. His eyes would become more protuberant with excitement. What he imagined to be a look of blood-curdling ferocity would spread over his face. The tip of his tail would twitch slightly, minutely, and then he would skim across the ceiling as smoothly as a drop of water. There would be a faint snap, and he would turn around, an expression of smug happiness on his face. The lace swing inside his mouth, with its legs and wings trailing over his lips like a strange, quivering walrus moustache. People of Earth. He would wag his tail vigorously like an excited puppy and then trot back to his resting place to consume his meal in comfort. He had incredibly sharp eyesight, for I frequently saw him spot a minute moth from the other side of the room and circle the ceiling in order to get near enough for the capture. His attitude towards rivals who tried to usurp his territory was very straightforward. No sooner had they hauled themselves over the edge of the sill and settled down for a short rest after the long climb up the side of the villa, then there would be a scuffling noise, and Geronimo would flash across the ceiling and down the wall to land on the windowsill with a faint thump. Before the newcomer could make a move, Geronimo would rush forward and leap on him. The curious thing was that, unlike the other geckos, he did not attack the head or body of his enemy. He made straight for his opponent's tail, and seizing it in his mouth, about 1/2 inch from the tip, he would hang on like a bulldog and shake it from side to side. The newcomer, unnerved by this dastardly and unusual mode of attack, immediately took refuge in the time-honoured protective device of the lizards. He would drop his tail and scuttle over the edge of the sill and down the wall to the zinnia bed as fast as he could. Geronimo, panting a little from the exertion, would be left standing triumphantly on the sill, his opponent's tail hanging out of his mouth and thrashing to and fro like a snake. Having made sure his rival had departed. What's going on, my beautiful boys? What's going on? Where's my little boy? Oh, I thought you were fighting Bo, but you're not. He's down below. You're just getting fractious. Yes, you've got worming water and you don't like it. That's it. That's all you've got, kid, for 24 hours. You need to be wormed. You need to be wormed. I'm not giving you any other water. I'm being told off. He doesn't like the worming water. All right. It's all right. You stuck with it till 10 o'clock tomorrow. And I suggest you drink some of it too. Yes. I don't put any worms on my birdie boys. He's really not happy, isn't he? Really letting me know. Well, what can I say, people today? Having made sure his rival had departed, Geronimo would then settle down and proceed to eat the tail, a disgusting habit of which I strongly disapproved. However, it was apparently his way of celebrating a victory, and he was not really happy until the tail was safely inside his bulging stomach. Most of the mantids that flew into my room were fairly small. Geronimo was always eager to tackle them, but they were too quick for them. Yes, Kermie. Unlike the other insects, the mantids seemed unaffected by the lamplight. They're so cute, the two of them. Instead of whirling round and round drunkenly, they would calmly settle in a convenient spot and proceed to devour the dancers whenever they settled to regain their strength. Just going to turn this a little bit. I want to see what they're getting up to. Right. On the same perch but at opposite ends. Right. I might have to separate them if he's bullying him too much. You being good boys? Mama T's good birdie boys. All right. Good boy. Right. Okay, everything's fine. Let me just repeat that sentence because I think we got cut off halfway through. Unlike the other insects, the mantids seemed unaffected by the lamp light. Instead of whirling round and round drunkenly, they would calmly settle in a convenient spot and proceed to devour the dancers whenever they settled to regain their strength. Sounds like me in the old days dancing at the live wire bar when all the predators would come out in waves. 12 o'clock was the sharkies, and 1 o'clock was the grey wolves, and 2 o'clock was some other kind of undesirable, and 3 a.m. was the piranha, as they were desperate to hook up before they went home for the night, not wanting to go home, feeling like failures as men that they hadn't managed to lure or seduce a woman into their nest of iniquity. People there. Anyway, it used to be quite comical actually. But you did feel really like you'd been devoured, at least energetically, by the end of the night. God, it could be awful. Really awful. But occasionally it would be also could be quite comical, because I'd be on my 4th or 5th wind from dancing non-stop for 3 to 4 hours, and getting more and more hyper vigilant as the night went on, and then it would just, all my attitude would come out, and it was actually quite hilarious, quite funny. Don't know if I could do that now. Too old and too tired. Slowing down a bit, people of Earth. I've still got the wit and the attitude, but I just don't bring it out all that often anymore, because I can't be bothered engaging with feckin' idiots anymore. I really can't. So there is that. The mellowing of the Tanya. Or the temporary lying fallow of the Tanya, until she comes out in all of blazing glory, and rocks the Kasbah again, whichever Kasbah I end up taking myself off to. Can be quite fabulous, if I say so myself, when I'm in my full femme fatale, shamaniac persona. Good fun, and no one gets hurt. Just living our best lives, dancing until we drop. Right. Their bulbous eyes seemed just as keen as the gecko's, and they would always spot him and move hurriedly, long before we had crept within fighting range. The night of the great fight, however, he met a mantis that not only refused to fly away, but actually went to meet him, and it was almost more than he could cope with. Bullies don't like it when they meet their match, do they? They really freak the fuck out. They're so used to dominating and being savage to other entities. When someone finally holds their ground, they shiver in their jocks like the meaningless, loathsome vermin they always were, always are, and no doubt will always continue to be. Got to call them out on their bullshit, people of Earth. But it's another thing I can't really be bothered indulging in anymore. Let them go, slowly destroy themselves from the inside out, while I remain sanguine in my own gnosis and get to laugh last and best and longest. Anywho. I had for some time been intrigued by the breeding habits of the mantids. I had watched the unfortunate male crouching on the back of a female who, with complete equanimity, was browsing on him over her shoulder. Even after his head and thorax had disappeared into the female's neat mouth, his hinder end continued to do its duty. Having watched their rather savage love life, I was now very anxious to see the laying and hatching of the eggs. My chance came one day when I was in the hills, and I came face to face, as it were, with an exceptionally large female mantis who was stalking regally through the grass. Is there any other way to stalk through grass, people of Earth? I wonder. Her belly was distended, and I felt sure that she was expecting a happy event. Having paused, swaying from side to side on her slender legs, and surveyed me coldly, she continued on her way, mincing through the grass stalks. I decided that the best thing to do would be to capture her so that she could lay her eggs in a box where I could watch over them in comfort. I can't see little Bo. Where are you, Bo? Bo! Where is he? Ah, over there. Right, I see him now. He sort of blends in. As soon as she realised that I was attempting to capture her, she wheeled round and stood up on end, her pale, jade green eyes outspread. Sorry, where'd I get that from? Her pale, jade green wings outspread, her toothed arms curved upwards in a warning gesture of defiance. Amused at her belligerence towards a creature so much bigger than herself, I casually caught her round the thorax between finger and thumb. Instantly, her long, sharp arms reached over her back and closed on my thumb, and it felt as though 6 needles had been driven through the skin. What's going on over here? They're very agitated because they don't want to drink that water. There's nothing I can do. I've got no other way of worming them. In my surprise, I dropped her and sat back to suck my wound. I found that 3 of the little punctures had gone really deep, and that, by squeezing, tiny drops of blood appeared. My respect for her increased. She was obviously an insect to be reckoned with. At the next attempt, I was more cautious and used 2 hands, grabbing her round the thorax with one and holding on to her dangerous front arms with the other. She wiggled ineffectually and tried to bite me with her jaws, lowering her evil little pointed face and nibbling at my skin, but her jaws were too weak to have any effect. I carried her home and imprisoned her in a large, gauze-covered cage in my bedroom, tastefully decorated with ferns, heather and rocks, among which she moved with light-footed grace. I christened her Cicely for no obvious reason, and spent a lot of time catching butterflies for her, which she ate in large quantities and with apparently undiminishing appetite, while her stomach got bigger and bigger. Just when I was certain that at any moment she would lay her eggs, she somehow or other found a hole in her cage and escaped. I was sitting in bed reading one night when, with a great whirring of wings, Cicely flew across the room and landed heavily on the wall, some 10 feet away from where Geronimo was busy cleaning up the last bits of an exceptionally furry moth. He paused with bits of fluff adhering to his lips and gazed in astonishment at Cicely. He had, I am sure, never seen such a large mantis before, for Cicely was a good half-inch longer than he was. Amazed by her size and taken back by her effrontery at settling in his room, Geronimo could do nothing but stare at her for a few seconds. Meanwhile, Cicely turned her head from side to side and looked about with an air of grim interest, like an angular spinster in an art gallery. Recovering from his surprise, Geronimo decided that this impertinent insect would have to be taught a lesson. He wiped his mouth on the ceiling and then nodded his head rapidly and lashed his tail from side to side, obviously working himself up into a death-defying fury. And Cicely took no notice at all, but continued to stare about her, swaying slightly on her long, slender legs. Geronimo slid slowly from the wall, gulping with fury, until about 3 feet away from the mantis. He paused and shifted his feet and turned to make sure that his grip was good. Cicely, with well-simulated astonishment, appeared to notice him for the first time. Without changing her position, she turned her head round and peered over her shoulder. Geronimo glared at her and gulped harder. Cicely, having surveyed him coolly with her bulging eyes, continued her inspection of the ceiling as if the gecko did not exist. Geronimo edged forward a few inches, scuffled his toes once more, and the tip of his tail twitched. Then he launched himself forward, and a strange thing happened. Cicely, who was up till then apparently absorbed in the inspection of a crack in the plaster, leaped suddenly into the air, turned around and landed in the same spot, but with her wings spread out like a cloak, reared up on her hind legs, and curved both serviceable 4 feet at the ready. Something tells me she's done that before. Geronimo had not been prepared for this spiky reception, and he skidded to a halt about 3 inches away and stared at her. She returned his stare with one of scornful belligerence. Geronimo seemed a little puzzled by the whole thing. According to his experience, the mantis should have taken flight and zoomed away across the room at his approach. And yet here she was, standing on end, arms ready to stab, her green cloak of wings rustling gently as she swayed from side to side. However, He could not back out now, having got so far. So he braced himself and leaped in for the kill. His speed and weight told, for he crashed into the mantis and made her reel and grabbed the underside of her thorax in his jaws. Sicily retaliated by snapping both her front legs shut on Geronimo's hind legs. They rustled and staggered across the ceiling and down the wall, each seeking to gain some advantage. Then there was a pause, while the contestants had a rest and prepared for the second round. Without losing their grips, right? I wondered whether I ought to interfere. I did not want either of them to get killed, but at the same time, the fight was so intriguing that I was loath to separate them. Before I could decide, they started once again. For some reason or other, Sicily was bent on trying to drag Geronimo down the wall to the floor, while he was equally determined that he should drag her up to the ceiling. Needed a level playing field somewhere, people of Earth. Know the feeling sometimes. Never fuck with the Tanya. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, calm your farm, Tanya. It's insects fighting. It's not you fending off drunks and perverts and debauchers. Calm your farm, Tanya. All is tutto bellissimo, even if it's only just for today. Right. But I'm right about them wanting a level playing field, aren't I? They don't want to fight vertically but horizontally. Guess it only makes sense if you're a mantid and a gecko, though. Or does it? They I just got that image. What's that name of that special karate? Shungo or something. Shingo. Karate, where they twirl and flip all across the walls. It's a special name for it. That's fascinating. That's vertical fighting, or kicking off the wall and attacking your opponent, going whirling around the entire room. It's amazing to see, actually. I got to see it once decades ago when I was doing some volunteer tutoring, and I had a Taiwanese student, and they invited me to their church for a moon festival, and they had that as part of the festivities, showing the experienced karate teenagers literally fighting from around the walls. You know, not real fighting, but exhibiting what it looks like. Amazing. That was the only thing I got out of that whole experience. It was very uncomfortable being in that church for both my daughter and I. But apart from that, that was fascinating to see. The song, they got the sweet little girl to sing about Jesus leading them by his blood-stained hands. It was chilling, and my daughter Crystal and I just turned, and we both at the same moment just turned and looked at each other and went and I said to Crystal, I don't think we should be in this space. She's like, neither do I, Mum. When can we go? And I went, we have to be polite. Can't just get up halfway through a service and walk out because we're Jewish. But it was awkward, very, very awkward. But yes, we enjoyed the exhibition of the karate fighters or warriors. It's a special advanced form of karate too. I can't remember exactly what it's called in Chinese. It'll come to me. by all the gods. Anyway. They lurched to and fro for some time, first one and then the other gaining the upper hand, but nothing decisive really happening. Then Cicely made her fatal mistake, seizing the opportunity during one of their periodic pauses. She hurled herself into the air at what seemed to be an attempt to fly across the room, with Geronimo dangling from her claws, like an eagle with a lamb. But she had not taken his weight into consideration. Her sudden leap took the gecko by surprise and tore the suction pads on his toes free from their grip on the ceiling. But no sooner were they in mid-air than he became a dead weight, and a weight that not even Cicely could cope with. In an intricate tangle of tail and wings, they fell onto the bed. The fall surprised them both so much that they let go of each other and sat on the blanket, regarding each other with blazing eyes. Something like that. Thinking this was a suitable opportunity to come between them and call it a draw, I was just about to grab the contestants when they launched themselves at each other once again. This time, Geronimo was wiser and grasped one of Cicely's sharp forearms in his mouth. She retaliated by grabbing him round the neck with the other arm. Both were at an equal disadvantage on the blanket, for their toes and claws got caught in it and tripped them up. They struggled to and fro across the bed and then started to work their way up towards the pillow. By now they were both looking very much the worse for wear. Very much the worse for wear. Yes, that sounds better. Cicely had a wing crushed and torn and one leg bent and useless, while Geronimo had a great number of bloody scratches across his back and neck caused by Cicely's front claws. I've got this weird rash on my neck too. Looks like something's been attacking me in my sleep. Probably has, for all I know. The skin's so sensitive I react badly to heat waves and, oh dear goddess, what can I do about it? Nothing. Nothing, people of Earth. At least my hair looks nice. Very pleased how that's turned out. Very pleased. It looked as though the mantis was tiring, but as her feet made contact with the smooth surface of the sheet, it seemed as if she was given a new lease of life. 'Twas a pity that she applied her newfound strength towards the wrong objective. She released her grip on Geronimo's neck and seized his tail instead. Whether she thought that by doing so she could hoist him into the air and thus immobilize him, I don't know, but it had the opposite effect. As soon as the claws dug into his tail, Geronimo dropped it, but the furious wriggle he gave to accomplish this made his head wag rapidly from side to side, and the result was that he tore Cicely's forearm off in his mouth. So there was Cicely, with Geronimo's lashing tail clasped in one claw, while Geronimo, tailless and bloody, had Cicely's left forearm twitching in his mouth. Cicely might still have saved the fight if she had grabbed Geronimo quickly before he spat out his mouthful of arm, but she was too wrapped up in the thrashing tail, which I think she thought was a vital part of her adversary. And with her one claw, she maintained a firm grip on it. Geronimo spat out the forearm and leapt forward. His mouth snapped, and Cicely's head and thorax disappeared into his mouth. This was really the end of the fight. Now it was merely a matter of Geronimo's hanging on until Cicely was dead. Her legs twitched, her wings unfurled like great fans and rustled crisply as they flapped. Her great abdomen pulsed, and the movements of her dying body toppled them both into a cleft in the rumpled bedclothes. For a long time I could not see them. All I could hear was the faint crackle of the mantis's wings, but presently even this ceased. There was a pause, and then a small, scratched and blood-stained head poked above the edge of the sheet, and a pair of golden eyes contemplated me triumphantly as Geronimo crawled tiredly into view. A large piece of skin had been torn from his shoulder, leaving a raw red patch. His back was freckled with beads of blood where the claws had dug into him, and his gory tail stump left a red smear on the sheet when he moved. He was battered, limp and exhausted, but victorious. He sat there for some time, gulping to himself, and allowed me to mop his back with a ball of cotton wool on the edge of a matchstick. Then, as a prize, I caught 5 fat flies and gave them to him, and he ate them with enjoyment. Having recovered his strength somewhat, he made his way slowly round the wall, over the windowsill, and down the outside wall of the house to his home, under the stone in the zinnia bed. Obviously, he had decided that a good night's rest was needed after such a hectic brawl. The following night, he was back in his usual corner, perky as ever, waggling his stump of a tail with pleasure as he eyed the feast of insects drifting about the lamp. It was a couple of weeks after his great battle that Geronimo appeared one night over the windowsill, and to my astonishment, he had with him another gecko. The newcomer was quite tiny, only about half Geronimo's size, and a very delicate pearly pink with large and lustrous eyes. Geronimo took up his usual stand in one corner, while the newcomer chose a spot in the centre of the ceiling. They set about the task of insect hunting with immense concentration, completely ignoring each other. I thought, at first, that the newcomer, being so dainty, was Geronimo's bride, but investigation in the zinnia bed proved that he still remained a bachelor establishment under his stone. Did I say made or maintained? Maintained a bachelor establishment under his stone. The new gecko apparently slept elsewhere, appearing only at night to join Geronimo as he shinned up the wall to the bedroom. In view of Geronimo's pugnacious attitude towards other geckos, I found it difficult to understand his toleration of this newcomer. I toyed with the idea that it might be his son or daughter, but I knew that geckos had no family life whatsoever, simply laying their eggs and leaving the young, when hatched, to fend for themselves. So this did not seem probable. I was still undecided as to what name I should bestow on this new inhabitant of my bedroom, when it met with a dreadful fate. To the left of the villa was a large valley like a bowl of green sward, thickly studded with the twisted columns of the olive trunks. This valley was surrounded by clay and gravel cliffs, about 20 feet high, along the base of which grew a thick bed of myrtles that covered a tumbled mass of rocks. This was a fertile hunting ground from my point of view, for a great quantity of various animals lived in and round this area. I was hunting among these boulders one day when I found a large, half-rotten olive trunk lying under the bushes. Thinking there might be something of interest beneath it, I heaved valiantly until it rolled over and settled on its back soggily. In the trough left by its weight crouched two creatures that made me gasp with astonishment. They were, as far as I could see, common toads, but they were the largest I had ever seen. Each one had a girth greater than the average saucer. They were greyish-green, heavily carunculated, and with curious white patches here and there on their bodies, where the skin was shiny and lacking in pigment. They squatted there like two obese, leprous Buddhas, peering at me and gulping in the guilty way that toads have. Holding one in each hand was like handling two flaccid, leathery balloons. And the toads blinked their fine, golden, filigreed eyes at me and settled themselves more comfortably on my fingers, gazing at me trustfully, their wide, thick-lipped mouths seeming to spread in embarrassed and uncertain grins. I was delighted with them, and so excited at their discovery that I felt I must immediately share them with someone, or I would burst with suppressed joy. I tore back to the villa, clutching a toad in each hand to show my new acquisitions to the family. Mother and Spiro were in the larder checking the groceries when I burst in. I held the toads aloft and implored them to look at the wonderful amphibians. I was standing fairly close to Spiro, so that when he turned round, he found himself staring into a toad's face. Spiro's scowl faded, his eyes bulged, and his skin took on a greenish hue. The resemblance between him and the toad was quite remarkable. Whipping out his handkerchief and holding it to his mouth, Spiro waddled uncertainly out onto the veranda and was violently sick. "You shouldn't show Spiro things like that, dear," Mother remonstrated. "You know he's got a weak stomach." I pointed out that although I was aware of Spiro's weak stomach, I had not thought that the sight of such lovely creatures as the toads would affect him so violently. "What was wrong with them?" I asked, greatly puzzled. "There's nothing wrong with them, dear. They're lovely," said Mother, eyeing the toads suspiciously. "It's just that everyone doesn't like them." Spiro waddled in again, looking pale, mopping his forehead with his handkerchief. I hastily hid the toads behind my back. "Gollies, Master Jerry's," he said dolefully. "Why's you show me things like that? I'm sorry I had to rush out, Mrs. Burrows. But honest to gods, when I see one of them bastards, I have to throws, and I thought it was better if I throws out theirs than in his. Don't you ever show me them things again, Master Jerry's, please?" To my disappointment, the rest of the family reacted in much the same way as Spiro had done to the toad twins. And so, finding that I could not stir up any enthusiasm among the others, I sadly took the creatures up to my room and placed them carefully under my bed. That evening, when the lamps were lit, I let the toads out for a walk about the room and amused myself by knocking down insects that swirled round the lamp for them to eat. They flopped ponderously to and fro, gulping up these offerings, their wide mouths snapping shut with a faint clopping sound as their sticky tongues flipped the insect inside. Presently, an exceptionally large and hysterical moth came barging into the room, and thinking what a fine titbit it would make, I pursued it relentlessly. Presently it settled on the ceiling out of my reach, within a few inches of Geronimo's friend. Since the moth was at least twice its size, the gecko wisely ignored it. In an effort to knock it down for the toads, I hurled a magazine at it, which was a stupid thing to do. The magazine missed the moth, but caught the gecko amidships, just as it was staring at an approaching lacewing fly. The book flew into the corner of the room and the gecko fell with a plop onto the carpet, right in front of the larger of the two toads. Before the reptile had recovered its breath, and before I could do anything to save it, the toad leaned forward, and with a benign expression on its face, the wide mouth fell open like a drawbridge. The tongue flicked out and in again, carrying the gecko with it, and the toad's mouth closed once more and assumed its expression of shy good humour. Geronimo, hanging upside down in his corner, seemed quite indifferent to the fate of his companion, but I was horrified by the whole incident and mortified to feel that it was my fault. I hastily gathered up the toads and locked them in their box for fear that Geronimo himself might be the next victim of their ferocity. I was very intrigued by these giant toads for a number of reasons. First, they appeared to be the common species, yet they were blotched with the curious white patches on body and legs. Also, all the other common toads I had seen had been only a quarter of the size of these monsters. Another curious thing was that I had found them together under the log. To find one such monster would have been unusual, but to find a pair sitting side by side like that was, I felt sure, a unique discovery. I even wondered if they might turn out to be something quite new to science. Hopefully, I kept them imprisoned under my bed until the following Thursday, when Theodore arrived. Then I rushed breathlessly up to the bedroom and brought them down for him to see. "Aha," Theodore observed, peering at them closely and prodding one with his forefinger. "Yes, they are certainly very large specimens." He lifted one out of the box and placed it on the floor, where it sat staring at him mournfully, bulging and sagging like a blob of mildewed dough. Yes," said Theodore. "They seem to be the common toad, though, as I say, they are exceptionally fine specimens. These curious marks are due to lack of pigmentation. I should think it's due to age, though of course I may be wrong. They must be of considerable age to have attained such proportions." I was surprised, for I had never looked upon toads as being particularly long-lived creatures. I asked Theodore what the actual age was that they attained. "Well, it's difficult to say. There are no statistics to go on," he pointed out, his eyes twinkling. "But I should imagine that ones as large as these might well be 12 or even 20 years old. They seem to have a great tenacity for life. I have read somewhere of toads being walled up in houses and so forth, and it appears that they must have been confined like that for a number of years. In one case, I believe it was something like 25 years. He lifted the other toad out of the box and set it down beside its companion. They sat side by side, gulping and blinking, their flabby sides wobbling as they breathed. Theodore contemplated them fully for a moment and then took a pair of forceps out of his waistcoat pocket. He strode into the garden and overturned several rocks until he found a large, moist and liver-coloured earthworm. He picked it up neatly with his forceps and strode back to the veranda. He stood over the toads and dropped the writhing earthworm onto the stone flags. It coiled itself into a knot and then slowly started to unravel itself. The nearest toad lifted its head, blinked its eyes rapidly, and turned slightly so that it was facing the worm. The worm continued to writhe like a piece of wood on a hot coal. The toad bent forward, staring down at it with an expression of extreme interest in its broad face. On its broad face. "Aha!" said Theodore, and smiled in his beard. The worm performed a particularly convulsive figure eight, and the toad leaned farther forward with excitement. Its great mouth opened, the pink tongue flicked out, and the forepart of the worm was carried into the gaping maw. Toad shut its mouth with a snap, and most of the worm, which hung outside, coiled about wildly. The toad sat back and with great care proceeded to stuff the tail end of the worm into its mouth using its thumbs. As each section of thrashing worm was pushed in, the toad would gulp hard, closing its eyes with an expression as if in acute pain. Slowly but surely, bit by bit, the worm disappeared between the thick lips until at last there was only a fraction of an inch dangling outside, twitching to and fro. Said Theodore in an amused tone of voice. "I always like watching them do that. It reminds me of those conjurers, you know, that pull yards and yards of tapes or coloured ribbons out of their mouths. Only, of course, the other way round." The toad blinked, gulped desperately, its eyes screwed up, and the last bit of worm disappeared inside its mouth. "I wonder," said Theodore, meditatively, his eyes twinkling, "I wonder if one could teach toads to swallow swords. It would be interesting to try." He picked up the toads carefully and replaced them in their box. "Not sharp swords, of course," he said, straightening up and rocking on his toes, his eyes gleaming. "If the swords were sharp, you might get your toad in a hole." He chuckled quietly to himself, rasping the side of his beard with his thumb. And thus concludes chapter 13, the Snow White Villa. And I'll be back tomorrow, no doubt, some other time, the space-time continuum, according to my feelings of contributory duty and constitutional awareness, all being well and all that jazz. Very tired now. Very tired, people of Earth. But the weather seems to be improving, so hopefully it'll be nice tomorrow. We can perhaps sit out in the garden. That's if it's not raining. Kookaburra's on the hills hoist again. Hello, Cookie! I gave him and his mate some pastrami this morning, so they were very happy birdies. All right. Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. Bye for now.